But when I look at and then I'm looking at him. Am I looking in the camera? Yeah, because you see sometimes you put it under so just put it short left. Yeah. I'm not looking at
Good day and welcome to today's Conversation podcast. We've started a series, Zambia at 60, to review the country, what we've done in the last 60 years and what we hope to do in the next 60 years. You've heard various nations put up their national visions. For example, the African Union reviewed its 50 years of existence in 2013, and it put up the next 50 years plan, that should come to fruition in 2063. And they asked, what shall happen when we wake up 50 years later? What Africa shall we find? I asked a similar question. We've clocked 60 years this year. What Zambia shall we find in the next 60 years? What country shall our country be in the next 60 years? So one of our special guests is no stranger to this forum, is Mr. John Sangwa, State Counsel, a renowned lawyer, renowned commentator on public issues, human rights activist, and constitutional lawyer and expert. I've invited him back to kick off this series of Zambia at 60. Mr. Sangwa, welcome to today's Conversation podcast, and welcome back.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for inviting me again.
The conversation is very simple. Zambia is 60 this year. I think it's a sacred moment of reflection of who we are, what we are, and what we've done so far. What did we do wrong? What did we do right? What could we have done better? There is a stark comparison I like giving, that Singapore was a patch of desolate land 60 years ago. Zambia was far richer and wealthier than Singapore. Today, Singapore has leapt to the first world. Its GDP can't even be compared to Zambia. So are similar countries like South Korea, Malaysia, or any of the Far East countries that you may pick. You have small countries like Sweden and Norway. Again, these were small, insignificant countries. But now they are our biggest multilateral donor, giving us money and aid. We were wealthy, we were a multi-party democracy, and there was a lot of hope in the air with our natural resources, with what the Lord had bequeathed us. We thought would be much better 60 years. But when I look back and I see where we are, really, we've barely made any progress. That's a discussion today. Let's kick it off.
Yeah. Ambassador, what you've brought up is a very important discussion. And I do hope this is the kind of discussion that will dominate the rest of 2024, so that we make it as part of the national discussion, as opposed to the kind of cheap and unprogressive discussions that we are currently engaged in, which is not moving the country anywhere. 60 years is a long time. Like you have said, we have not moved anywhere. If you look at the manifestos of the various political parties, especially those that took part in the 2021 election, they are promising to address the same kind of challenges that President Kaunda promised to address when they were fighting for independence. So what we are basically saying is that all these challenges that are being discussed now existed as far back as 1964. And the sad part is that some of these problems have even gotten worse in the last 60 years. If you were to ask me, how would I grade the last 60 years? I would grade them as the lost 60 years, because we have basically done nothing. In fact, the country has regressed in many respects. And I think we have to be truthful about these issues, because depending upon the political party that is in power, they try and sell a message of success, a message of progress, and they even invent reality, trying to tell people things that are not there on the ground. And of course, the most telling experience is what we went through. How do you have cholera 60 years after independence? And this is a big indictment for Zambia, because you have talked about the resources that we have, but there are also other factors that we have. For example, our struggle for independence was not bloody like that of Zimbabwe, like that of South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, and Angola. These countries went through some kind of civil war, one form of civil war or the other, where all these countries were destabilized. We never went through that. When most of the countries in West Africa were going through military coups, we've never experienced a military coup in this country. We have never had internal conflict, okay, where there is, like you have in the Congo, where they have never known peace since independence in 1960. And yet, not only do we have the resources, but we have also been a peaceful country. We have never been to war with any of our neighbors. We work well with all our neighbors. Then the question is, why are we where we are? You talked about Singapore, but that's even going far. Just look at Botswana. Botswana was actually a basket case in 1966. Today, the per capita GDP of Botswana is far much higher than that of Zambia. Botswana is a far better run country than Zambia. You also have Namibia, for example, which got its independence in 1990, 34 years. It is still a better run country than Zambia. So these are the issues where we have to stop. We have to pause, forget our political biases and so forth, just discuss these issues as Zambians and begin to understand where we've gone wrong and what are the chances for the next 60 years. Now, as long as we continue on this trajectory, the next 60 years will be another wasted, will also be wasted years. Until unless we discover why and where we went wrong in the last 60 years, we fix those challenges so that we make sure that we don't make the mistakes we have made in the past 60 years going forward. I have my own thoughts, and before you can plot the way forward, you need to go back and understand Correct. Where you went wrong. And have my
there are various reflections depicting our failure, where we could have failed. For example, our economy literally is a mono economy relying on copper and copper exports. We have not developed our other sectors such as agriculture, our energy potential and others. There are issues of human rights and freedom, like the 17 years of one-party participatory democracy, what that did to our governance records. There are issues of how we didn't industrialize. Then there's an issue of leadership, that the leadership was selfish, was corrupt, that the leadership didn't allow, best ideas to flourish and best personnel to hold positions. Let's begin there. Where did we get it wrong?
Well, it's a complex issue.
Yes, correct.
But I'll try and break it up. Even at a human level, when you look at it, you find that somebody has this very unusual and strange behavior.
Yeah.
You begin to say, but why is this person behaving this way? But when you dig back into his background, you find that maybe this person went through some traumatic experience, which has now, long-term, which is now manifesting in his adulthood. And we invariably go back into history. Look at the life of this person. What exactly may have happened? And invariably we find that, okay, the reason may be in his, how he was brought up or whatever experiences he went through. And I think the same is also for the country. First, the problems we have now cannot be attributed to a single government. In fact, can be attributed to all the governments, all the political parties that have had the privilege of running this country since 1964. We're talking about UNIP, we're talking about MMD, PF, and now UPND. Now, is there a hope? The answer is no. There is no, I'm not optimistic unless we first of all recognize the problem, we identify the problem. I always love telling people to say, a doctor can never treat a patient unless he knows what is wrong with the patient. And the same is true for the country. No political party can fix a country or move it forward or bring about changes unless it has taken a deliberate and a conscious decision to understand where the failures have been and be able to correct them. You need to correct the situation. Correcting is like treating the country. Now, the way I describe Zambia is I equate Zambia to a patient that is suffering from multiple organ failure. If you look at Zambia, and if we're really honest with ourselves, you will find that there is no single sector of this country that is operating as it should. Every aspect of this country is broken. This is a broken country. It's a damaged country. And that is evident. Proof of that is you will find that in the manifestos of the various political parties, it's like a copy and paste. They are talking about the same issues. There is no single sector that any of these political parties have identified to say, this sector is working okay, therefore let's focus on this other sector. Every sector is actually problematic. Every sector is broken. The issues you have talked about, the economy and other people have talked about how bad the economy, the issue of sanitation and everything else, failure to diversify, failure to industrialize. From my perspective, those are symptoms. They're not the problem. Okay? Now, to understand where Zambia got it wrong, we have to go back in history. And I know, unfortunately, people are not so much keen on history, but...
No, that is the purpose of the Conversation podcast, is that we should have healthy, deep conversations.
Yes.
You cannot correct the mess of this country without discussing every aspect of it. I think our people ought to become patient.
That's right.
It can be a Twitter line or a sound bite.
No, unfortunately. And you see, and that is why issues of government, they are serious issues. And that is why I've always argued that, you see, you need to bring in your best brains in the country to be able to address government issues because they are complex issues. They cannot be, like you have said, you cannot have a solution in one line.
Yeah.
These are complex issues. Let me go back. We have to accept, first of all, where Zambia came from. Okay, Zambia is an artificial creation of imperial interest. Okay, but the story is long. But let me bring the story starting at 1924. Slightly before, in 1911, we have the two Rhodesias brought together to form Northern Rhodesia. Until 1924, these two territories were being run by the BSA company. It was the entire country, the people, all the minerals, and was treated as an asset of a company. Then obviously, the company realized that it wasn't profitable running these territories. They decided to surrender them to the British government, and the British government took direct administration of Northern Rhodesia. Now, there is also another important point to remember, which is the fact that, and that is what accounts for the fact that we had a very largely peaceful road to independence. Long before, I think going back to the time when Lewanika was signing the treaties with officers of the BSA company and then brought in the involvement of the British government, the understanding was that the British area north of the Zambezi, this was before it was being called Northern Rhodesia, was going to be under British protection. Now, so Northern Rhodesia, from the very beginning, was a protectorate, as opposed to a colony. I don't know whether people understand the difference between a colony and a protectorate.
You may indulge us. In fact,
a colony,
in 1890, when the agreement is being signed, between I think King Lewanika of the Barossa land and representative of the British South African Company, the agreement was very simple. Give us these exploration areas for mineral exploration, and we'll guarantee you protection of your kingdom.
That's right.
Because there were insecurities with these tribal fights.
Yes, there were tribal. There were threats from other tribes, especially those that are in modern-day Zimbabwe, and also from other imperial forces like the Portuguese in Angola, and the Portuguese in what became known as Mozambique. So the understanding from the very beginning was that on account of those treaties, the entire territory became a protectorate. Now, what is a protectorate? A protectorate really is that the British government is saying, we will help you until you grow to the point whereby you are able to run your own affairs. Because as far as they were concerned, we are primitive. We didn't know how to run a modern country, a modern economy, and modern system of government. And therefore, the British government was responsible for both the internal and external affairs of Northern Rhodesia. Whereas in a colony, the British government, like Zimbabwe, for example, because Zimbabwe attained internal self-rule in 1923, meaning that the British government was only responsible for its external affairs. The internal affairs were being run by the settler community, the whites. They were the ones who were running Zimbabwe, the formed government and so forth. But whereas in Zambia, in Northern Rhodesia, the British government said, no, we are governing this country, we are controlling this country for and on behalf of the Africans. When they are ready, they'll take care of themselves. That was the understanding. And there was even a concept which was known as the concept of paramountcy, meaning that if there is a conflict between the interests of the Africans and those of the Europeans in Northern Rhodesia, the interests of the Africans would prevail.
Okay.
That was the understanding. So fast forward. So what happened was the British government was running this country until such a time that people were able to do that. So what was the system they created? The system of government they created was an inclusive system, meaning that they created structures which took care of everybody in Northern Rhodesia. It didn't matter what tribe you came from, whatever, and so forth. And that is why, and with that also became an inclusive economic system.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay? So the two go hand in hand. And I'm sure if when we go forward, you'll see the connection.
Yeah.
So the understanding was that with the economy, which was inclusive, government structures which were inclusive,
yeah.
and that was the way the British government was moving. And that is why, for instance, when a decision was now made to grant Northern Rhodesia independence, there was the question of Barotseland. That is how that Barot's agreement had to be settled before independence, because the British government wanted an inclusive society. Okay? So, and also they recognized that there was a small settler community. That settler community also needed to be protected. And that is why you have in 1963, for the first time, they introduced the Bill of Rights. So, as independence, you have a system of government that was there to take care of everybody, an economy that was there for everybody. That was the basis on which independence was given. There was no discrimination, no territory was treated more important than the other. You wanted to set up businesses, people came here. The role of the British government was simply to maintain law and order. There was rule of law. You want to set up a business, the rules are there, and the role of government was to make sure that you comply with the regulatory requirements, you take care of your workers, you pay your taxes. That was all that was required. That was the system we inherited. As a result, that is how we are ranked as, I think, on a GDP basis, we are per capita, we are the second or third richest country on that basis. Because
in Africa.
Yes, in Africa, because we had a vibrant economy.
Yeah.
The question is, where did we get it wrong? Things started going wrong in 68. In 68, if you remember, Kaunda made the Material Declaration.
Yeah.
Where they are now saying they're going to nationalize certain companies. Certain companies, they're going to outrightly nationalize that, and in other companies, they will take at least 51% of the shares.
Yeah.
Now, you now see the process of a government morphing, changing its position to now taking over the economy of the country. Now, that was the beginning of problems for this country. Other scholars...
Yeah, 1968 becomes very fundamental because there are many issues that begin to take place there.
Yes.
At internal level, UNIP and Dr. Kaunda has lost control of the party.
Yes.
A faction led by Simon Monsaka Pwepwe has beaten the candidate of KK Kamanga, who was standing as vice president. And this faction that, KK had hoped to vanquish, now are controlling, and they've won major seats in the party. And the structure was like what the ANC is. The vice president of the party becomes the vice president of the country. At the same time, Dr. Kaunda had done reflections in the last 4 years. I think he was now listening more to attend to the radical issues. He was listening more to how he could grab and control the country. Because they were saying, look, we are independent, but we are not economically independent. The private sector, up to 80%, is run by private people, individuals and foreign entities. So the concept of Zambianization became very attractive.
Yes.
The issues of the constitution, because we had this constitution crafted in 1963 and enacted in 1964, which was prevailing, and it had prevented KK from making serious structural changes without violating the constitution. So the amendment of that constitution became priority. And you as a constitutional law expert know is that the first thing Keke targeted was unilateral decisions that he wanted to be making. So he removed the clause for referendum.
Yes. Yes. You see, and that is where our problems begin.
Yeah.
Okay? That's where the history is very important.
Yeah.
That's where things went off the rail. Now, 68, you remember there was is this Nalumuno Mundia?
Yeah.
From this political party in 68. Yeah. What happened? It was proscribed.
Yeah.
It was prohibited because he left UNIP for whatever internal issues that were there. Now, so the first declaration was to attack the economy. Now, they gave reasons, but later on we discovered that they were not actually genuine. The next thing was to attack the constitution, because the two have to go hand in hand. You needed a political system that will support a certain economic system. So what did they do? You also had to reform the structures of government. Now, we must understand that, first of all, the independence constitution was a negotiated constitution. It wasn't imposed, contrary to the views of many people. After the election of January 1964, there were now talks about independence. And that is how you see, then immediately thereafter, the British government accepted. And then I think from February up to, I think, August or so, there were talks about the constitution. And those constitutional talks were held in London at Marlborough House. And who attended? ANC attended, UNIP attended, the Northern Rhodesia government attended, the British government attended, and the party, I think, should be UFP, which was the party for the white settlers. So the Constitution of 1964 had input from all the players. Now, what happened? As usual, when people get into power, they start playing around with the Constitution. So the first issue that Kaunda did was to amend the Constitution in 69. Now, this was even long before the removal of the referendum. They attacked the civil service. That was the first order of business. There was an amendment in 1969. Now, the system which they inherited provided for a secretary to the cabinet, who was a top civil servant, non-partisan. And he acted as a link between cabinet and the rest of the civil service. So basically, the politicians had no access to the civil service except through the secretary to the cabinet. And the secretary to the cabinet was appointed by the president in consultation with the Public Service Commission. So what did they do? They changed the constitution so that instead of secretary to the cabinet, they introduced secretary general to the government. Now, this was now literally a party cadre. Now, who was the first secretary general to the government? Was the late John Wanakatwe. Now, there is an interesting excerpt from the justification that was given for these changes.
To abolish the position of secretary to cabinet.
Yes, you know. So, which is very interesting to go through in order to understand the reasoning behind these changes. Now, this is what the vice president then, Kapwepwe, said in support of these changes. This was the first casualty. Yeah. So you have now, so you started a process of politicizing
the civil service.
The civil service. The structure of government was such that civil service was politically neutral, there to serve any party that came to power. Now, the problem is this: UNIP did not consider itself to say it was going to rule and there was a chance that it could be removed from power. So it was now consolidating its position to make sure that it is not removed from power. This is what Vice President Kapwepwe said in the National Assembly. He said, the Secretary General to the government, who will combine the functions previously performed by the Minister of State for Cabinet and Civil Service and the Secretary to the Cabinet, will therefore be the head of the civil service. As such, will be responsible for presiding over the transformation of our British-oriented civil service into a truly Zambian civil service designed to service the interest and ensure the development of Zambia. The appointment of a Secretary General to the government is the first step towards accomplishing this transformation. He went on to say, the civil service we inherited at independence was principally designed for the maintenance of law and order in the interest of the colonial government of that time and not for those of the majority of the people, which again was not correct anyway, but it sounded nice at that time. The civil service was not designed for development administration, which is also not correct, because that civil service transformed a country which was a bush into what we are celebrating at independence. Then he went on to say, it will be the work of the new Secretary to the Cabinet to translate these administrative reforms into efficient civil service administrative reforms, into an efficient civil service machinery geared for rapid development in all the corners of the country. We all know what subsequently transpired. But this began the process of politicizing the civil service. And this is where things started going wrong. Yeah. Because when you enter into a structure of government, as a political party, you have to respect the structures you find. You don't begin to alter them to suit you. And that is why all my life I've fought I'm very reluctant and opposed to a political party that comes to power, wanting to change the constitution. Okay? So this was a big issue. Yes. This was a big issue almost 30 years later. Yes. In the 1990-91 movement by the MMD. This became a campaign issue. Yes. And as soon as President Chiluba became president, he reinstated the position of Secretary to Cabinet, abolishing the position of Secretary General. Yes. But what he didn't do was to insulate that position with similar powers it had before its abolition in 1969. That's right. You see, even when it comes to appointment, right now the president can fire a permanent secretary at will. But under that system, you couldn't do that. You had to consult the Public Service Commission. Okay? Now, this is what Scott Wiener said on the same subject. Yeah. I think we have set up a firm pattern in this house and in this country that we are not going to imitate what happens in Britain. If Britain appoints civil servants as secretary, if Britain appoints a civil servant as secretary to the cabinet, that does not necessarily mean Zambia has got to adopt a civil servant as secretary to the cabinet. The real problem which we are faced with here is really the question of coordination. In a new and developing country where you've got to merge the party with the government in order to get the party and the government and the people off the ground, so that instead of grumbling, they're doing something, you've got to get a very close liaison between the ruling party and government. This was the rationale. Yeah. But this was a process of politicization. Now, what transpired, Ambassador, is that we started reforming these institutions. They didn't stop there. It wasn't reform. Yes. We're degrading this, not reforming, but cooking them to suit the people. Now, the people who are in government. Now, they didn't consult anyone. We're in power. They are now altering the constitutional order of the country. They didn't stop there. You remember we talked about the referendum in 1969, which was removed, and ultimately you have one-party state in 1972.
Yeah, before the next elections, because there was an election coming up in 1973. It was supposed to be a multi-party elections, but that's a tumultuous period.
That's right.
For Dr. Kaunda.
Yeah.
I think his naked dictatorial ambitions are laid bare. He abolishes some multi-party system. He amends the constitution, removes a clause for referendum that required him to get consensus from the people, and he accelerates the speed to establish the one-party state. Of course, this is fashionable. Nyerere in Tanzania is doing the same. He was even more radical.
Yeah.
He abolished chiefdoms, accusing them of being imperial forces and that they sold some of our people as slaves. And he says they've been divisive instruments. So he abolishes traditional authorities and he imposes a one-party state. For Zambia, there are issues of security that are being used because we are housing these liberation movements. And there are security incursions from South Africa, Defense Forces, the apartheid one, and from Zimbabwe, the Sailor Scouts. So KK uses that very admirably. He says, look, we are threatened and the enemy has emerged. Music artists are singing these songs of how a sellout or a saboteur you are if you don't support Kaunda,
Yeah.
And so the ANC under Harry Mwanga Nkumbula, Nalumino Mundia has since, by 1972, rejoined UNIP after, I think, a lot of pressure. And Kapwepwe is ostracized. So KK is determined to put this country under one-party state, and he achieves.
He achieves that, and that was the beginning.
The next election in 1973, we go literally with one candidate.
Exactly. So what is the effect of that?
Yeah.
The effect of that, you have abolished an inclusive system of government. Okay, remember, you have inherited an inclusive. So what has happened? What you have now created is a government controlled by a small clique. What happened next? ANC was dead. All the other political parties, they were dead. So you only had one political party. What happened now? You now have this political group also controlling the economy. So that economy, this group was not inclusive. The economy was also not inclusive. The economy was there to serve this small clique. And that's why you can see, and what you start, this is the beginning of the process of extraction. You have an extractive economy, an extractive political system. It is not there to serve the people, but it is there to serve the ruling elite. And that is how, for example, I'm sure there were some names in this country that were equal to royalty. And through those political parties, they were able to appoint their friends, relatives to key parastatal positions. Okay? So the ordinary person was left out. If you are aggrieved, you want politically, you have no avenue for displaying your dissatisfaction because UNIP was the only political party. In fact, they went further. For instance, I remember the only political member, a card of a political party I've ever bought in my life was a card as a member of the UNIP Youth League, because that was necessary for you to get on a bus. You had to show your card. Now, so you now have the system is actually destroyed. Now, fast forward, what happened? By 1991, of course there are many factors, but the beginning were these structural changes that happened, where you now have an extractive system. So the economy was there to serve the political elite. The government was there to serve the political elite. I remember when we were at university, we used to use the term pig, the party and its government.
Yeah, pig, yes.
Pig. So which means government is owned by the party, not by the people. So the government is there to serve the party.
No, in fact, the Central Committee was above cabinet.
Yes.
Cabinet decision could be overruled by Central Committee.
Exactly.
Which was a creature of the political party of UNIP.
Exactly. So the outcome of this is that there was very little in terms of political debate. There was very little in terms of consultations. Whatever Kaunda decided was the position. And there were other consequences that we are still paying for today, in the sense that the British government established rule of law. In the case of Kaunda, what was in place was rule by law. I don't know, let me explain the difference. Rule of law means if I find that there is a law that says don't do it, you can only do this. You must act within 14 days. I must act within 14 days. Otherwise, I have no right to act beyond 14 days. Rule by law means I look at the law, says no, the law says 14 days. It says yes, but I want to act after 30 days. Then you say, okay, go to Parliament, change the law and make it 30 days to suit me. And I remember, I don't know whether you know this State Council, Malama, Stephen Malama.
Yeah.
He told me a story as a young lawyer in the Attorney General's chambers, that the Attorney General at the time was Fitzpatrick Chula. That Fitzpatrick Chula would hear that, oh, Kaunda wants to do ABCD. He would check the law and says, no, the president can't do this. Fitzpatrick Chula would drive to State House, see the president. Mr. President, you can't do this. Then Kaunda says, why not? Because the law says you can't. Then I said, okay, what do I need to do? Okay, what do I need in order to do what I want to do? Then Fitzpatrick Chula would say, well, until and unless you change the law, you can't. Then it's okay, go and change the law. That is what characterized. The bottom line is that whatever Kaunda did, though, was backed by law. That was the benefit. But the point is this, that extractive system that emerged did harm to the country. And in the process, you look at the parastatals, for example, one of the reasons they collapsed was the inefficiency, theft, and corruption. And they were just non-performing anyway. They doomed the country. And that is how we ended up with the 1991 changes. Now, what was
the 1991 changes are remarkable because first there's a collapsed economy, and there are vigilantes that have emerged that are stronger than even the police, you know, and they're harassing people at bus stops and markets. They can stop you demanding for a UNIP card. There are changes across the globe where Socialist Party, which UNIP had now transformed itself to be, communism and socialism was collapsing. The Soviet Union bloc was collapsing. The changes and wind of change that come in 1990 is facilitated by local and global issues. The local issues is that Dr. Kaunda had overstayed. His system had become parasitic. Exactly what you are saying, that it had become extractive for the benefit of the ruling elite. And it was a rule by man, Kumulu, Inole Sapanshi, Kaunda.
Yes.
So it was a rule of law. So the rule was by man, not by law. And therefore, the dawn of the MMD is fascinating because then they're supposed to correct these historical injustices.
That's right.
But sadly, when we reflect, they didn't.
They didn't.
The first thing they did was to begin to ride on the very things that Dr. Kaunda faced.
Exactly.
In 1964, Kaunda was being told, Chitupa Chivi.
Yes.
You know, Public Order Act is bad.
Yes.
They can't stop us from doing this. He abolished Chitupa, but he left the Public Order Act.
Yes.
Similar in 1991, we see the ruling elite also begin to choose and pick what they can abolish and what they can keep for their own preservation.
Yes. Now, the problem that you have is exactly that. Now, again, they should have had the conversation we're having now in 91. 27 years, we have wrecked the economy. Where did we go wrong? Where did Kaunda go wrong? Now, if they had an answer to that, then they should have put in measures to make sure that they correct the damage done by Kaunda. But again, they didn't do that. Why? The problem is that the people that formed MMD actually came from UNIP. Okay? So, it is just a way of trying to continue the extractive system of government, extractive economy, but the only thing you had to change were just the players. And that's what happened in 91. There were no major structural changes done to the system of government.
There was, to some extent, Council. The IMF sneaks in this program called privatization. Because one of the ills they've identified is that your economy is controlled by 80% state-owned enterprises, and your state-owned enterprises are inefficient. They are run by people that are not professional, but cadre-oriented. They are bloated because every governor, every minister, every person who's important wants to have their relatives employed. So they say the problem is the state-owned enterprises, and they're running 80% of the economy. You have to change that. There is a reflection of how the economy ran between 1964 and 1968. And we begin the privatization program. Of course, at the end of that privatization program, it left people unemployed. We were trying to create a textbook, how to run a country. They said the civil service is bloated, so we trimmed down the civil service, I think, to under 100,000 people. Left people unemployed. State-owned enterprises, the mark was very simple. If it's not profitable, close it, liquidate it, sell it. Of course, the vouchers came in and benefited. So you, 10, 15, 20 years later, as we are sitting here, you have a country that is deindustrialized. You have a country now that is relying on imports to run its economy. And the factors of exchange rate, which is now volatile, becomes fundamental because you have to rely on imports, and imports require to be paid in foreign exchange, convertible currencies. You have the same momentous question we had in 1964, in 1991, in 2021, and now facing us. We are back to square one.
Yeah. We are. And this is, when you are saying there were changes in 91, these are largely cosmetic. But the structure of government remained the same. It was still a captured system. It is still an extractive. It was not an inclusive system that was created. What you see, because if you go back, the driving force was to remove Kaunda. They never talked about these structural challenges. They said Kaunda was a problem. But beyond Kaunda, what else? There was nothing. So when you talk about those changes that were done, these were forced changes. So what simply happened was the economy remained still extractive in nature, not inclusive, in the sense that you privatized these economies. And this is now, then how do the ruling elite now still get their benefits? Okay? That is now how you begin to have these companies sold, but you still have to find a way to get rent from them. It was now another way of extraction. And that is how now governments still remain a key player in the economy. You are now asking these companies that are now doing business with government, for you to get a contract, for you to get this, for you to get that, you have to pay something to the ruling elite. That system remained. Now, obviously, between 1991 to 2001, that problem was not so pronounced because the country was under the supervision of the IMF. Now you have a problem up to 2008 when the debt is cleared, is cancelled, and everything else. And what happens? Now you still have that kind of You now have a bit of money now, okay? Fast forward. We said in 2011, we don't want MMD. Fine. Why? The same issues. Corruption, okay? The system was still extractive in nature. It was still taking care of a small group of people. Now, when a system is inclusive, people don't change their government. They can never take out a political party. For example, you have examples in Botswana, for example. You have had the same party from 1966. But what you do have are changes of presidents within the political party. Why? Because that political party is performing, is delivering, and the people feel that they are part of it. The system is inclusive. The economy is inclusive. Now, we have now changed, 4 political parties. Now, you have had UNIP, MMD, PF, UPND now. Now, people are now saying UPND has failed. It has to go, a view that I also share. The question is, when that happens, we will have changed 4 political parties in 60 years. This will represent the highest turnover of political parties possibly anywhere else in the world. Especially in Africa, it will be the first of its kind. Now, the question that is there is, why? The reason is very simple. The structures are not inclusive. The government is not, the political system is not inclusive, and the structures of, the economic structures are not inclusive. They are purely extractive in nature. What you have is a small clique that is still benefiting from the system. You have your civil service, which is still politicized. Those are the challenges that we face. Now, we have 2011. The question is, what major changes did President Sata Olungu take during that 10-year, which distinguishes them from MMD? Nothing. The only thing that changed were the players, but the structures remained largely the same. Or what you're doing is that, well, if there was Ambassador Mwamba in a certain position, I put Ambassador Banda, but the structures remain the same. So our structural system, we need to address that. Fast forward 2021. 2021, I was very optimistic.
Yeah.
After we opposed the amendment of the Constitution, Bill 10 collapsed, and there was that attempt to, even though President Lungu, the Constitutional Court, ruled that he was eligible, but he was still stopped through the ballot. I was so confident that the country is on a good path. Now, and I even said at a personal level to say, you know what, I've been an activist since 1990. So 2021, I said, well, I've done my part. Now it is time. I'm almost 60. I said it's now time for me to relax and enjoy my last few years. Like many Zambians, I think my optimism was misplaced.
2021 is momentous in nature. The PF have been in government for 10 years. I think they've rejuvenated what we saw in the 70s by building infrastructure, from schools, colleges, universities, to health centers, clinics, hospitals. They've built power stations, dams, bridges, roads. And the Zambians said no. So as of 2021, there's a move to remove President Lungu. Whether his party has done these momentous issues, the feeling is that his government could have done more. The feeling is that he has not develop the country into the aspirations of our people. There is President Hakainde Hichilema, who presents himself as Mr. Fix-It. He says, whatever problem you say, I will fix it. He didn't say the institutions you're talking about will fix it. He didn't say the structures of government are wrong. He said, I will fix it. When they said Millimil is 120 kwacha, he said, I'll bring it at 50 kwacha. When they said electricity is expensive, he says, we have hydropower, we don't pay for water. Power will be cheaper. When they said, fuel is at 17 kwacha, he said, no. The problem is the middlemen. The middlemen are eating. That's corruption. I'll remove the corruption and your fuel will be... He said, I'll fix it. There were many silent voices that said the rhetoric by President Hakainde Hichilema was extremely dangerous because he presented himself that he has this miracle cure to these 60-year-old problems. The problems we face today didn't arise because of Lungu or Sata or Kaunda. They are a combination of the last 60 years of many mistakes. So when a man stands in front and says, I will fix it, I thought Zambians will not be gullible and believe that he will fix it. But Zambians did believe in the man, not in the institutions. And I think the biggest problem President Hakainde Hichilema has is that people are merely reminding him, you said you fix fuel. Is this fixing fuel when it's costing 34 kwacha, when you promised it to be below 17 kwacha? They're asking him, you said Millimil was 120 kwacha and you bring it to 50 kwacha. Now it's over 350 kwacha. Is this what you promised? So the crisis President Hakainde Hichilema has, he singularly represented himself as a solution to this country. I think which narrative, if we had proper narrative, we should have debunked in 2021. We should have said, Bane, this is cheap. Can we have some depth in the conversation? Mr. President, the required changes needed that are structural, that are constitutional, that are historical, cannot be done with a magic wand.
No.
In fact, every time I have this conversation, State Council, I'm beginning to believe that even the solution required for a country may not be resolved in 5 years.
No.
May not be resolved in 10 years.
No.
Because the damage is lasting in the last 60 years.
That is correct. That is correct. And my dream, I think if the country comes to recognize where the problem lies, we have made progress. If only we can acknowledge that this is where the problem is, then we start fixing. Ambassador, that is progress enough. Right now, we don't even know where the problem lies. What do? We are attacking, like I've said before, symptoms. Now, when we acknowledge, if I may just add on to what you have said, the reason why I was optimistic about the president was, I think which was a mistake on my part. I was convinced that being in opposition for 15 years, he has taken time to understand the dynamics and the problems that the country faces. Okay? Because clearly when you aspire for leadership, you must have a clear idea as to what you're going to do from day one. Okay? I was under that belief, and I was convinced that the country is in good hands. You remember when he gave his inaugural speech, it was full of life, full of hope. And I remember you and I having a conversation. You reminded me to say, no, this speech sounds like a cut and paste. I don't know whether you remember that conversation.
I do.
That was followed by another speech during the opening of Parliament in 2021, which also reminded me to say, no, this is another cut and paste. Because if you go back to those speeches and check what he promised in those speeches and what is happening on the ground, it's like night and day. There's no relationship between the two. Now, I sensed the trouble first 3 months, because there's always this saying that first 3 months. And obviously people are saying, well, no, you don't expect to solve the problem in 3 months. It says, no, it's not solving problem in 3 months. 3 months is for you setting the tone for your government. You fail to do that in the first 3 months, which is your first 100 days, you're gone. Okay? And I was reading something that somebody was suggesting that UPND will rule up to
28, they've been saying they will rule for the next 50 years.
Yeah. Well, given the current trajectory, even if you gave them all that time, I do believe that they can't solve the problems of this country. They can't. Even if you give them 20 years, 20, 30 years, they can't. Because they don't understand where the problem lies. You cannot begin to treat a patient unless you understand where the problem lies. Now, I realize that the president, even if you listen to him, I don't think at all he understands what is wrong with the country.
When I returned from Addis Ababa in November 2021, he barely was 2 months old in office, and I appeared on Radio Phoenix, and there was a lot of optimism in the country, and a lot of disdain to people like myself, because I came from a political party that had just been defeated. And, this was just 2 months after he had attained power. So I was given time to reflect on, is it 90 days? I think he had done 90 days or so. And I gave a very grim picture. I said, it's not possible that President Hakainde Hichilema will get us out of the hole. Because the state of the country, the state of the economy, and the crisis we face, his proposed solutions, because now they were celebrating, progress being made with the, with the IMF, and was speaking of 3 million metric tons into the mining sector, relying on foreign investment, that the investors will come running and will ramp up production up to 3 million metric tons. So
that was a speech by Minister of Finance. Yes.
So I was saying, looking at the presidential speech in Parliament, his inaugural speech, looking at the Minister of Finance, Honorable Musokotwane's speech in Parliament, and looking at what they are relying on to resolve the state of our country, I don't think they are going anywhere, because I think they don't understand what the problem is. And they are refusing to learn from history. We were at a similar situation in 1991. We had the huge debt of $7 billion. We had inefficiencies in the economies. And we thought a magic bullet of privatization will resolve our crisis.
No.
In fact, it sank the country further.
Yes.
As we stand now, we are among the 20 poorest countries in the world.
That's right.
Despite our wealth.
Yes.
We have a leadership that don't understand the problem.
No.
That's why every day they are changing with solutions.
Yes. Now, I don't know.
Now, my question is, when you do these reflections, where should our country begin to go?
Yeah. We have lost 60 years. Do we have capacity to pull out of this mess? Yes, we do. But we have to acknowledge first that we are in a mess. Okay? But when you have a president basically creating a fiction of success, you have a problem. When the president said we have done 80% of, in terms of
of what we promised.
Of what we promised, what's your reference point? Ambassador?
Yeah.
What's your reference point? And
no, they've engaged in utter lies. Let me give you this clear example. There's a narrative emerging.
Yes.
That the GDP in 2020 was 18 billion. Now it's 29 billion. And there's celebration among the UPND camp. They're beginning to band around these numbers. Now, a mere search of that shows that the IMF does review or rebase our economies. You can do a bilateral rebasing where you engage them to come and check the state of your economy. The last time we did was in 2010, where our economy jumped to now somewhere around, I think it was a small economy, to around $20 billion. By 2020, 2021, we were at 26 billion. There was regression in 2020, when we had COVID, where it fell to 18 billion. But by 2022, our economy had rebounded to to 26 billion of our GDP. So the IMF, if you've looked at the records, they've done a projection where they have actually rebased Nigeria was the largest economy in Africa. It is now number 3. South Africa became number 3. South Africa has become number 1. And Egypt is now number 2. Nigeria is number 3. So Zambia has gone to 29 billion, coach. And this is a reflection of 5 to 10 years. Like I'm saying, the last time we did a proper rebase was 2010. The 29 billion that is the IMF have used on the state of the economy has nothing to do with what Hichilema has done. In fact, it's a reflection probably of the last 10 years of how our economy has grown. But they are banding this as success. That, look, the PF left it at 18 billion, as we've jumped it to 29 billion.
Yeah.
So they are technical in their lies, but you can see through them.
Yeah, but even then, what do those numbers mean to an average person?
Correct.
Okay. What do they mean? 0. And in any case, how do you grow an economy to that level? And at the end of the day, you still have cholera. Huh? That is very basic. Now, choleras, you have outbreaks of choleras in failed states, not in normal functioning. That is a major, serious indictment in terms of your governance when you have problems like that. But the point is this. The challenge that we have, and I've said this, and the sad thing is that you can't lie, okay? The way to develop a country is to be truthful. Let the data speak for itself. Be honest with the people. But when you lie, the lies do catch up. You are trying to manufacture success. You can't manufacture success. Now, why am I so pessimistic about the future?
Yeah, just 2021, we're very optimistic.
Yes.
You had even prescribed a retirement for yourself.
Yes, that's right. Then you just said, well, you look at it and say, I was sure the president knew what is wrong with the country and what is going to target it. Now, what is obvious is that he doesn't. And when you are a doctor, aren't you, unless you know what is wrong with your patient, you're not ready to treat that patient. And if you do, you kill that patient. Now, it is not, and the problem, what is worse in this country, the president and this party do not know the problem. What is worse is when they pretend to know. Ambassador, there is nothing wrong in you saying, I don't know. What is worse is for you to pretend you know when you actually don't know.
They say little knowledge is more dangerous than ignorance.
Right. And that's how you see the president, for example, is talking about 80% satisfaction, that is going to grow the economy is going to double the economy. I don't know whether you heard that. Yeah. That is going to double the economy. Now, the economy in the last 60 years has been faltering. What is it that you're going to do that is going to double your economy? Okay? Now, this is again talk. Is it possible to solve the problems in Zambia? Yes. But the road ahead will be long and painful.
That is, for me, the next set of conversation I want to have.
Yes.
You've painted a picture that the country is broken in the last 60 years. You've painted a picture of literally a more failed state. Although on the surface we appear to have peace and we appear to have institutions of democracy appearing to work. We go to elections every 5 years. So on the surface we look like things are working when in fact not. In fact, when you say a failed state, you're not far from it. Let me give an example. Just in the last 1 year, we've had health outbreaks that should only be, symptomatic to a failed state. Cholera as an outbreak, dysentery. We had typhoid. We had anthrax, something we never knew as, what do they say, zoonotic disease migrating from animals to people. Anthrax breaking out. We have syphilis, I fear for our young people. Apparently there is a syphilis outbreak and it's taking lives of young people because it's an embarrassing disease they will not say. and they are dying inside. They'll lie that they have fever, like you were saying, and the doctor is treating them for fever when they have syphilis. The state of our country, the extent of our corruption, the poverty levels have risen. They're now at 60%. And where we are going, we literally have a broken system. Zambians are clutching in the dark looking for leadership. Is it Emmanuel Mwamba? Is it Edgar Lungu? Is it Sakwiba Skota? Is it Brad Munduvile? And of late, since last month, your name is topping up. Your name has come up as one of the proposed people that should be a president of this country. It may be an uncomfortable discussion, but I want to throw you right into the lion's den. There are these feelings about you and you being a possible leader for our country. Have you heard them? Have people approached you? Have you taken them seriously?
Yes, I have. I've heard them, and it is something that I've been reflecting on. In fact, I made that personal decision, but I think soon after 2021, I think 2022, when I was convinced that I was so sure that the country was in the right hands. And when the president appointed Dr. Mumba Malila as Chief Justice, I even said the judiciary is now in good hands.
You did a long congratulatory note.
Yes. But a few months later, I realized, no, I think those accolades or positive pronouncements, I think, were premature. And the reason for that was the conclusion that these characters didn't know or do not know how to where to fix the country, what to do to fix the country in the first place. And I've been an activist for, like I've said, for the last 34 years. And if you had asked me before, would I have considered maybe 3 years ago, would I have even entertained the possibility of getting involved in politics, I would have told you outrightly, no. Then you reach a stage whereby it is, okay, fine, if I believe I can make a difference, why can't I make myself available? And I started toying around with that idea. And I was recently asked in an interview whether it is something that I would consider. And my answer to that was, if it is the will of the people, I will accept that responsibility. The reason for that is very simple, Ambassador. I think we have a twisted notion of leadership in this country. Leadership is a privilege. When people elect you to be president, MP, member of parliament, councillor, or mayor, it is a privilege. It's not a right. Now, as long as we understand that, a privilege, you don't grab a privilege. A privilege is given to you in recognition of who you are, in recognition of the special qualities and everything else that you have. Now, and it is a privilege to go and serve, not to be served. And that is why I entertained that. And I said, Ambassador, I'm 60. I don't know how many more productive years I have. But whatever they are, be they long, be they short, if I could dedicate those years to the benefit of the 20 million Zambians, Ambassador, that would be my greatest privilege to do. And I'll be readily, it is something that I would gladly do. In the sense that, you know, the sad part is, I think we have cheapened leadership in this country. And I'm not saying this to be arrogant, but that is why I'm not putting myself there. I'm saying if it is the will of the people. Because it's not a trumpet you can blow for yourself. It is a trumpet that has to be blown on your behalf by other people. The reason being that for you to offer yourself for leadership, there are certain requirements for leadership. One is your character. And your character is formed over a lifetime. And these are the things that we have ignored in the past. We just find somebody who is able to talk, to lie his way through, and we said, is the right person. We don't look at how he has lived his life. Because character is not something you can reform overnight. If you've been a crook all your life, you can't become a decent human being because you're given a position of responsibility. But also another point is that I also believe that when you offer yourself for leadership, you must have certain skill sets necessary for that leadership. Now, again, it's not for me to blow that. I have spent 30 years of service to this country, and if people believe they look at that track record, they believe I can make a difference, Ambassador, I would not hesitate. And that is why I have not jumped into this fray, because I'm trying to do things differently.
That raises my second question. It's like you want to jump into the mud pool. Politics is deemed dirty in this country, is structured in a manner where you be considered a novice and an outsider. Let's start with the Constitution. It requires that you are sponsored by a political party. Have you, from entertaining the idea that there's an opportunity for you to be a leader of this country, to the next stage, which is the how? How will you attain the vision? If Zambia says, I think Sangwa is a good man, he's an upright man, he's shown that he's a decent man and that he cares about our country, but how do we make him president? So are you joining UCA? Are you joining People's Conference? Are you forming a political party? Have you gone to that second stage?
No, I haven't. And here is the reason why, Ambassador. I'm a lawyer. I don't take a case to court which I know I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
Okay? You do your homework. Now, when you go to court, you must be convinced that you have a solid case. If you don't have a solid case, you don't do it. And if you do, it's professional misconduct. Okay? Now, by the same token, and that's why I've simply said, if the people want, I am available. Now, it would be arrogant of me to wake up today and say, I'm forming a political party. Because who says people even are interested in me as a leader? Who says? Okay? And that is how we have had all these problems with if you look at the last election, for example, how many political parties took part? 2021.
Yeah.
About what? How many?
Is it 11 political
parties? No, I think they must have had 14 or so.
14, yeah.
14 political parties. Now, the two main political parties.
It was just PF and UPND.
Yes. And they got what? About 98 or 97% of the votes.
Between them.
Between them. Now, the remaining 12 or whatever, 10, they got less than 3%. 3%.
In fact, the number 3 were spoiled votes.
Yes, number 3.
Yeah.
If there is such a political party.
Yeah. So the spoiled votes were more than... the next political party was number 4. Because the spoiled votes were number 3. Yeah, yeah.
So you have that data,
yeah.
So you have to look at the viability of your own candidature, okay? Is it viable? Now, if it is viable, then you move on to the next phase. Or what I've done is that I've just expressed the desire to say, listen, I would like to. There's still a lot of dynamics that are still at play, because you have to learn from what has happened in the past, There is no way
They say, the analysts, and
Yes.
I'm one of them, is that the political atmosphere
Yes.
is extremely hostile to candidates like yourself.
Yes.
Because first, they need someone who throws money around.
Which one happened?
Yeah, they want you to form a political party and manufacture the perception that the people want you. They want a candidate who probably tell a lot of lies.
Yes.
I
Which
think
you won't
President
get?
Hakainde Hichilema, I took time to see his candidature in 2006.
Yes.
I saw his debate on ZMBC. I think he was trying to be truthful and structured, and it was very formal, boardroom-like. 2008, nothing much changed. 2011, 2016, there is a huge dynamic.
Yes.
The candidate in 2016 and 2021 in Hakainde Hichilema, he has learned Bemba because he has learned that the political currency in this country for politics, for crime, for reaching the masses is Bemba.
Yes.
So Hichilema now is a fluent Bemba speaker. He speaks Nyanja.
Yes.
You know, and he's speaking less English at public forum, and he has abandoned the technical speak. That is an environment you are dealing with. Will the environment change you, or will you try to change the environment to yourself? Like I said, it's a pigsty.
Yes.
Either you have to join the pigs in the dirt, or you have to invite the pigs to your clean area. I don't know what your thoughts have been.
No, you see, the problem is who have turned it into a pigsty. It is the people that are extracting the beneficiaries of the current system. Why? Because they want to protect their interests. It doesn't have to be dirty, okay? It doesn't have to be. Now, all these people that are involved in the dirty work, all these are sponsored, they are sponsored individuals, by the way. They are not the real actors. You know, the real actors are behind the scene, busy extracting. And then the crumbs are the ones which they throw at these people to go and do the dirty work. But again, the ambassador, the point is this. As a country, we have a choice. That's why I'm being brutally, it's not something that one would say, I'm desperate to do.
Yeah.
The point is this. We have tried the politics of the last 60 years. Where have we ended up? Zero. So we have a choice. Either we change and do things differently, or we continue on the same path. Now, if you want to continue the dirty politics, that's a choice of the Zambians. And the Zambians equally have the right to reject, to say, we don't want this kind of politics, because this is what has existed in the last 60 years. Where has it gotten us? Now, at the end of the day, transforming this country, Ambassador, is a choice that the Zambian people have to make. Either we continue on the same trajectory, or we change course. Okay? So I have no problem. I'm not desperate for this. But what you're talking about is based on the data of politics of the last 60 years. Ambassador, what is the outcome of that? Does it spell success? Why should we be relying on templates that have not produced positive results? Okay? And that is why I'm trying to do things differently. At the end of the day, my appeal is not to the other people. My appeal is to by the way, through this process of extraction, you know the beneficiaries, they are less than 20%. The rest, 80%, the majority are suffering.
The majority have joined in the game. Let me give you an example.
Yes.
Professor Patrick Lumumba, he was an anti-corruption guru in Kenya. You know, Kenya is plagued by tribal politics. Even their alliances are all by tribes. And then there's a lot of corruption in the politics. So Professor Patrick Lumumba, who holds himself very clean, who has a vision for the country, decided to join the fray. And he chose a constituency. And he says he spoke development, he spoke vision for the duration of the election. His rival came 2 days before election and just distributed money. And Professor Lumumba, with all his brilliant ideas, lost that election. So you have an electorate that has now joined the frame. Why should I vote for you? When I vote for you, you disappear for 5 years. When I vote for you, you lie. So before I vote for you,
I need to eat.
Give me chitenge. Let me eat from you. Feed my people and promise me a job. So other than the transformation of the players, you have an electorate that is highly politicized and the electoral process is highly monetized. Have you analyzed the environment?
Ambassador, I'm fully aware of that environment, and that is why we started back. What you're talking about didn't start today. It started way back in the 60s. Kaunda laid the foundation for that kind of politics. The only thing is that it has just changed in brutality, okay, and complexity. But the template is the same. So at the end of the day, Ambassador, like I said, I have very few functional years remaining. And if the general consensus is that a person like me is not suitable, that's fine. I walk away. But I'm not going to try and fit into the mold. Now, it is people, if you truly want to transform this country, you don't have to fit into the mold. The problem is that when you do that, you're already captured from the beginning. And what you're going to be that, you're going just to be another extractor.
And besides, they'll beat you at it. They've better experience.
Exactly. So why would I mean, how? They've perfected the game. So you don't go there and play their game. No.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that is why when people say, if you formed a political party, I haven't formed a political party. The reason is very simple. The tradition in this country, when you form your political party, is yours. Now, the foundation of any political experiment is very important. I am looking for a collection of Zambians with like-minded, and I would love to believe that out of the 20 million, not every one of us want to be in the pigsty. Okay? And the reason why I'm not even forming a political party, I've simply said I am interested. The reason is that I recognize the enormity of the responsibility. The issues confronting this country are huge. You don't want another person who's going to say, I'll fix it, I'll fix it. We have had that example. Okay, what has happened? Nothing has been fixed. But it is to be truthful, to recognize that there will be no quick fix solution, but what is important is to set the country on the right direction. Okay, it will take a while. But the point is, the problem we have is you can't build when others are extracting. That is where the problem is. So you have to stop the extraction. To do that, you have to transform your civil service. You have to fix the civil service. You have to fix your quasi-government statutory bodies, because these are the people who control our lives. Okay? And these are the people, the institutions and the people in these institutions that are extracting. Okay? So, until you stop, I mean, we're wasting another 60 years. I don't have time to waste, Ambassador. I have no time to waste. And all what I'm saying is that the Zambian people have a choice to make. Do you want another 60 years of poverty, or do you want another 60 years of progress? Okay, the choice is theirs. We know where we've gone wrong. And also sometimes it's difficult to understand. We keep doing the same thing. And hoping by some miracle, we get a different result. No, it doesn't. Okay? The structures will have to be changed. What is required in this country, this is my view, is a leadership, not one man, a group of people that love this country, that are prepared to die for the good of this country. There's always a price to be paid. If you're not prepared to pay that price, don't get involved. But that is required, and that is why it is also important, why I've said it is up to the people. The reason is that leadership is a partnership. Those that have been given the privilege to lead must have the support of the people that they are leading. They must work in unison. But when you say, I'll fix it, you can't. You can't. And we have evidence of that. So these are the challenges that we face, Ambassador. At 60...
in fact, this brings me to the last part of our conversation. We've identified, I think, the issues, both structural and leadership. And part of the solution is to reform our leadership, our mindset, and the planning of our country. We've had, I think now, 8 national development plans. We've had 60 years at it. What happened to our national development plans? As we go to the next 60 years, what can we do differently?
Ambassador, the national development plan, they read no different from manifestos. Okay? These are all good ideas and so forth, but at the end of the day, the system is broken. These are good papers to produce. At the end of the day, structurally, the institutions are incapable of implementing those reforms. For example, I will, since you have talked about this thing, I took the liberty of looking at a part of this, which was generated in 2022.
Yeah,
okay.
The 8th National Development
Yes.
Plan.
Now, you look at issues where they're talking about, say, for example, I took a keen interest to do with the judiciary and the institutions to do with how the judiciary is working and so forth. I think there is a paragraph which is dealing with rule of law, human rights, and constitutionalism. First of all, you go to the plan. What do they actually mean by rule of law? What do they mean? Okay? Read there. This is just something that is just been put there for the fun of it. Now, do we have serious problems with rule of law? Yes, we do. Now, I explained that during Kaunda colonial rule, you have rule of law. Under Kaunda, you have rule by law. Since 91 to date, what we have is complete lawlessness. Complete disregard of the law. Okay? Now, it is being delusional to think that you can develop a country in a state of lawlessness. You can't. Rules are important. They are important. Now, even when people are talking about developing, no, we're going to grow the economy and so forth. Now, first, no serious investor will come to this country unless it's also going to be extracting. Okay? And that is why most of our so-called foreign investors, these are short-term guys. They just come to extract. Okay? Nobody's going to put a business where it's going to wait for 5, 10 years before they start receiving their return on their investment. Nobody's going to do that because of the state of lawlessness. Now, the absence of rule of law is deliberate. Because in a state where there is law and order, you minimize theft. You minimize corruption. Okay? When you have a big investment, you don't need to go to State House, for example, to have that investment blessed. You walk into the country, you know the laws, you follow the laws, you set up your investment, you pay your taxes, you pay your workers, and that's it. The systems have been broken. We need to sort out to make sure that it's not just a pronouncement. Rule of law means if the law says this you can't, you don't do it. Okay? Now, you're talking about, there's also this thing about courts and so forth. Ambassador, the most painful part of it is that even our own judges who are supposed to enforce the law are now extracting from the system.
A part of the lawlessness.
Yes, they're extracting. Okay? So every person in a public institution is extracting. It's no longer about service. It is about how am I going to get
to benefit
from the system. That culture has to end. Let's take the judiciary as an example. Yes, the salaries are very poor. Okay, they're very low. Granted, but now as a country, but the Constitution says the judiciary shall be adequately funded. Now, whether we like it or not, we have to adequately fund them because of the role they play. But what is happening is that literally most of the judges are moonlighting as arbitrators. Okay? Now, ordinarily, first of all, that is in violation of the Judicial Code of Conduct. And you know very well you have worked as a civil servant. You cannot, during working hours, be doing your own stuff. Those 8 hours, working hours, you are paid by the state. Yeah. Okay? You are paid by your employer to work for those 8 hours. Now, those 8 hours we know at law, we say, an employer owes you a salary, but it doesn't owe you work. You can go to your office and sit and read newspapers and get paid at the end of the month. But you cannot say, therefore, oh, because I have no work, I'm going to start using the same time to try and do some other work. You can't. You can't. But that's what is happening. So everybody, every person in a government institution, statutory bodies, they are all extracting. So fixing this country is not a job of one man. We have to make a collective decision as Zambians. Do we want to continue? Yes. It's also our choice. We have the right to mess up our country if we want to. We also have the right to fix our country by saying, this is wrong, this has to stop, we can do things differently. That's a choice that we have as a people.
Yeah. You clearly had said broken down country and institutions are reflecting. Have you begun to think about what could be done better?
Yes.
In forms of, first, arms of government, for example, the executive. Do you propose a lean, small government? What are your thoughts there? Do we need deputy ministers back? Do we need ministers outside government? Have you thought about it? Because some of the things that are wrong have emanated from the head of the executive. And we've seen that the rotten extends everywhere.
Ambassador, the problem is far more complex than that. First, the country needs to raise a new group of leadership that acknowledge the problem. And that will have a clear vision to go and solve that problem. You need a group of people that is not just going there to replace people that are extracting. That's the starting point. At the end of the day, and that is why I've been busy trying to speak to various people and so forth to join hands to say, we know where the problem is. We are going there to solve the problem. By the way, it's a very dangerous mission, which we have to acknowledge in the sense that when you have an extractive system, it has its sponsors who are both internal and external. And if you wondered why we're in this state for 60 years, because our misery, other people are benefiting from our misery. Other people are extracting.
Dangerous it is. I was told to keep quiet.
Yes.
Or I'll face serious consequences.
Yes.
I receive threats every day.
Yeah.
Threats that have extended to my family. You know, I've been locked up, I've been tortured, I've lost opportunities. It's not a simple mission to come into politics, especially opposition politics.
Yes.
Have you thought about that?
It's a sacrifice, Ambassador. What's the alternative? The alternative is either join the group of people that are extracting from this country or just keep quiet. But the point that is that, yes, what you're talking about, this is what I'm saying, it's an entrenched system. Okay, it's an entrenched system which is feeding itself. And that is why when you say, no, it's muddy and everything, it's been made deliberately that way. Okay, so that people continue to extract. The political system is structured that way. The economic system is structured that way. So Zambia's challenge is to raise a group of men and women that first of all acknowledge that this is the problem and that are prepared to change, to reform that. Okay? So the problem is not so much at the institutional level, it is the people running these institutions. Okay? That is where the challenge is. And if we don't, and that's why I've said, and that's what I've said, I haven't rushed into forming a political party. Okay? Because I know the enormity of the responsibility. Okay? Now, and it's not a one-man show. Anybody who says, I'm going to fix this, is misguided. And it's just going to be another extractor. You know, I was talking to somebody who was appointed by one of the Western governments to come and do research on the extent of corruption in the country. And one of the things I was told is that the things that are happening in Zambia are even worse than what is happening in countries like Afghanistan. Now, at the end of the day, and the level of corruption is monumental. Now, like I've said, we have a choice to make as a people. We have a choice to make. The 20 million Zambians have a choice to make. Because you don't need to be taught about the extent of poverty. You don't. We live with it every day. So either you continue crying about this, or we resolve to do something about it. It's risky, it's dangerous, but necessary. It has to be done.
Are you an ideologue? Do you believe, for example, in Western concepts of running the economy or Eastern concepts? Are you a pragmatic? Or are you waiting for thoughts of groups of people that you gather to come and refine these visions, maybe about how to run the economy? Should there be state participation in the economy or less participation in the economy? To what extent will government, participate in resolving the crisis of our country?
Ambassador, I'm not tied to any ideological perspective, because the moment you subscribe to an ideology, you're putting yourself in a certain straitjacket. You have to conform to those. What is required is to be pragmatic. What works for Zambia? What will work for Zambia? What will work for Zambia may not work for other countries. And I'm one that is opposed to the idea of uplifting ideas from other countries. Ambassador, 60 years, we have derived enough data to formulate solutions for this country. We don't need to look to another country. And what is required is a Zambian solution to these issues. The problem is that we uplift concepts and ideas, which have worked well in other countries. For example, even if you look at the European Union, for example, if you look at those countries, they all have their own different systems of government. It's not uniform, okay? But they subscribe to certain ideals. Each country has its own constitutional order that is determined by its own constitutional history and experience. Therefore, similarly, in Zambia, we need to develop something that is homegrown, that is a product of our own experience. We know where we've gone wrong, okay? So we need to make that decision. So to answer your question, no, I believe in being practical. And that is why, for example, people expected me to form a political party. I've refused. Because data shows when you and I form a political party today, we'll have a press conference, and tomorrow what happens? There'll be two of us standing, okay? But after all, what is a political party? A political party is like a tent. Now, you can't pitch up a tent if you don't know it's coming, okay? And in fact, your own experience to do with PF has demonstrated that problem. You have a dear brother who has the papers to show he has the tent, but the tent is empty. But the other side, they have the people, but they have no tent. Okay? So these are the practical realities, and we have to learn from the mistakes we have made. What makes up a political party? It's people. Now, there is no way you're going to marshal something if there is nobody who buys into your ideas. Okay? So what is required? I've expressed interest, but I acknowledge that it's not a one-man show. And if there are people out there who share my beliefs and so forth, then we move forward. And if at the end of the day people say, sorry, your ideas are utopian, I lose nothing, Ambassador. I do not have the luxury of participating in 5 elections. I don't. I look at the viability of my candidature. If at all that is, I believe that people will grant me that privilege to serve them, I'll take it. But if they don't, I still respect their will. Okay? But it's not something that I must get at all costs. No, privileges are given.
The issues of the intangibles that we haven't spoken about, other than the issues of structure, identifying our natural resources, the intangibles in relation to unity, national unity, ethnic division that is emerging, especially in the political class. The perversion of tribalism in our politics, is, I think, has become dangerous. Have you paid attention to those issues that threaten to fracture our country?
Yes, and in fact, and that is where my disappointment comes in. Because if anybody, you want to solve, what you are doing is to entrench the extraction. Okay? But I've heard arguments like people said, no, there's nothing wrong with what President HH is doing because Lungu did it. Ambassador, you never fight evil with evil. Now, if what President Lungu did was that good, he would still be in power. But we removed him because we believed that what he was doing was wrong. Now, what also it shows is that when you know what is wrong with the country, you wouldn't do things like that. What is required is to move people towards unity. And also, you know, it's very sad because if you really know the challenges the country faces, the challenges that are facing the country, you wouldn't do that because, and I've seen this where people are saying, well, certain people from certain region have been put in certain positions. Ambassador, appointment to public institution should be merit-based, not tribal or regional. It shouldn't. Because when you occupy that office, you are there to serve each and every citizen in this country. When you are a civil servant, you are a servant of the 20 million Zambians. Therefore, you need to have the requisite competence to be able to serve the people. So there is no way we can develop this country if we throw out mediocrity. It has to be merit-based. And also it's a bit naive to even play that card. Because anybody who understands the politics knows that no single tribe can put somebody in office. You need a collection like we did in 2021. Because in 2021, we broke ranks. It was no longer about this tribe, that region. We came together to save Zambia, to do what was in the best interest of the country. So it is very sad to see that tribe regionalism is an issue. And for me, those are red lines. I can't cross that. Even if somebody was to tell me today that my clear path to victory is to play a tribal card, I wouldn't. There are certain lines that you never cross, no matter how desperate you are, because taking such a route is not beneficial to the country. The country needs unity, and in any case, when you look at it from a practical point of view, no single tribe has a monopoly of educated people. No single tribe has a monopoly of rogues and thieves and criminals, okay? Being a good or bad human being is not tied to any particular tribe. So the country can only move forward if we acknowledge the fact that, first of all, it is structurally defective, and we need to have the right people. Ambassador, the world has become complex, very complex. You need our best brains to be running these institutions, not cadres. cadres will benefit because the economy is improved, because there's improvement in the quality of life. But you cannot, and then it comes down to another thing, Ambassador. Even when you're talking about leadership, you have to ask yourself, what is it that is in you that you think you, because you can't give what is not in you. So these are the challenges that we face as a country, and we have to have this conversation. It is necessary because we have wasted 60 years. Our countries, other countries that were at the same level as we are, have progressed. Now, at a human level, you can drink yourself to death. It's your choice. People help you, take you to rehab and so forth. But at the end of the day, if you are destined to send yourself to the grave, you will. The same with the country. We have to make a collective decision. Do we want to improve the state of affairs in this country or not? It's our choice. If we want to remain poor for the next 60 years, it is our choice as a people. But if we want to get out of this mess and then move forward, that too is our choice. So it is out there. I think the message that needs to go out is that as Zambians, we need to make a choice. 60 years is too long a period to be poor.
I love that. 60 years is too long a period to remain poor, which we have done in the last 60 years, and we've done reflections of what needs to be done in the future, including leadership. Mr. Sangwa, I would like to thank you for gracing the reflections of Zambia at 60. I wish you well in your political endeavor. You're welcome to the club. And we all wish you just, success and God's blessing during this difficult walk. It is a difficult walk. What are your last words?
I think it's a plea. It's a plea. For those of us that have been privileged to be educated in this country, those of us that are privileged to have the capacity to put food on the table, to be concerned about those that are not able to do that, and to be able to unite and bring about change to this country. I know the sacrifice is huge, but the meaning of life is not how long you have lived. It is how you have lived. And at the end of the day, what is your legacy? I think that is what my plea is. And at the end of the day, unless we do something radical, we change the trajectory of this country, we're looking at another 60 years that will be wasted. Okay? Like I've said, I'm 60. I've had my best years in life. I've had an exciting career. I have had a good life. I have done some exciting stuff. I don't have to do what I'm thinking of doing. But I'm trying to find a way, how can I give back and leave behind a better Zambia? And I think that should be the commitment and desire of each and every Zambian. At the end of the day, we can also choose to do otherwise. If we're not prepared to make that sacrifice, then we should all stop complaining and accept the status quo and just go with it. But I think time for complainers should end, and I think should be time to take practical steps to dig this country out of the mess it is in. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Dear viewers, we had an exciting special program. We're now running a series we're calling Zambia at 60, reflecting from 1964 to date. What have we done? What have we done right? What can we do better? And then beginning to look into the future in the next 60 years. What should be done for our country? How can we be a prosperous, united, and successful country in the next 60 years? And my special guest was Mr. John Sangwa, State Counsel, a renowned lawyer, commentator, and I now dare say a presidential candidate for 2026 general elections. So until next time, God bless you, God bless our country, and shalom, shalom.